our guests, I ask you to once again, listen. Whether you agree or disagree, this is an opportunity to hear a candidate's point of view. This is a learning experience for all. I take great honor in how you have presented yourself in the first two candidates in the classroom sessions, and I have no doubt that you will meet the same expectations today. So I thank you very much as I call now Matt Blair. Please listen up and go Central Pride.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Vacarezza. My name is Matthew Blair, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the sophomore class. This year, the sophomore class officers have been working with Mr. Vacarezza and Miss Jen to bring an ongoing learning series to Central High School. This series, called Candidates in the Classroom, a focus on our future, is designed to increase student voice, our voice, in the presidential primary process. In New Hampshire, we are fortunate to host the first in the nation presidential primary. The many hopeful presidential candidates can be seen all over New Hampshire, campaigning and trying to get their message out. Our Candidates in the Classroom series is a chance for Central High School students to be front and center in the presidential primary process. Our series is bipartisan, and we have invited presidential candidates from both parties. The hope is that we can together listen to the candidates, learn about their vision for America, and engage with them to get questions answered that are important to us. I am most pleased to welcome you today to the third assembly in the Candidates in the Classroom series. Before we begin, I would like to recognize today your sophomore class officers. Vice President Rachel Bangasimba, Treasurer Ella Tarza, and Secretary Aiden Kelly. After we hear from the candidate, there will be an opportunity for questions from the students. With the help of Mr. McDonald, students in history classes have prepared questions for the candidate. We have questions from all grades and a wide cross-section of our student body. Today we will hear from Governor William Weld. Governor Weld is the former governor of Massachusetts. He is running in the Republican primary. Governor Weld earned his college degree from Harvard. From there, he went on to receive a diploma in international economics from Oxford University. He then returned to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he earned his law degree from Harvard Law School. In 1981, he was appointed United States Attorney for Massachusetts by President Ronald Reagan. As a prosecutor, he focused on public protection and corruption cases. In 1990, he was elected governor of Massachusetts, becoming the first Republican to win the governor's race in Massachusetts in over 20 years. While serving as governor, he cut taxes 21 times. Governor Weld was instrumental in making welfare reform, and he focused on improving public schools. Governor Weld says that his experience as a Republican in the Democratic Commonwealth of Massachusetts shows that he knows how to work across the political aisle to get things done. Governor Weld has called for the impeachment of President Donald Trump. He believes that the anger, division, and political gridlock in Washington has to stop. Please join me in welcoming Governor William Weld to Manchester Central High School.
governor of Massachusetts, I introduce myself these days as a New England Republican. And in New England, at least, people seem to have some idea what that means. Briefly, it means I'm a fiscal conservative and socially much more open, welcoming, tolerant, and supportive of all individuals and groups. I once had occasion to speak to a Republican National Convention, and I said I can sum up my political philosophy in one sentence. I want the government out of your pocketbook and out of your bedroom. So that's fiscally conservative, socially liberal, and that's pretty much what I am. I'll tell you one personal story which is kind of an object lesson for young people, and then we'll go to questions and answers. But when I was in law school, I volunteered and did work analyzing legislative bills for a young, very young state representative at the State House in Boston. And I worked hard at that and handed in all my memos. Everyone else was having fun out on the lawn in front of the State House, having a big anti-war rally and make love, not war, etc. But I was working hard, and I went home and never thought about it again. And several years later, I got a call from the young state legislator who said, I just got a telephone call from a congressman. They're looking for young lawyers to go work on the Nixon impeachment in Washington. Would you have any interest? I said, well, maybe. So I went down and worked on the impeachment of Richard Nixon, President of the United States, in '73 and '74. I actually shared an office with an equally young lawyer named Hillary Rodham, who'd gone to Yale Law School, not Harvard Law School. That was the beginning of my career as a litigator and in public life. I went back, ran for Attorney General, and I may say that Hillary and I wrote the book on what is grounds for impeachment of a president for the House Judiciary Committee, way back in that prior experiment. So I'm knowledgeable about that. But so I ran for Attorney General, lost very badly, and then ran again for governor after serving 7 years in the Justice Department under Ronald Reagan, as Matt said. So that work that I did that Saturday afternoon in the State House became the foundation for the rest of my professional career, and I didn't know it at the time. And the lesson is, do little things well, and somebody will notice. That's a good lesson for people at your stage, I think. Anyway, that's enough about me, as they say, and I'd be very happy to take questions from the audience.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is OConnell. I'm the student body president here at Central. To what extent do you agree or disagree with the actions or policies President Donald Trump has made during his term as president?
Well, I disagree with a lot of what the president has done. I would have supported the tax cut that went through in 2017. As Matt mentioned, I cut taxes 21 times when I was governor, and my motto was, there's no such thing as government money. That money doesn't belong to the government. There's only taxpayers' money. So I like the tax cut. I would have supported both of the Supreme Court nominees, although obviously the second one got very messy, but I thought Neil Gorsuch was a real good choice for the first one. I will say that I'm strongly pro-choice on the question of reproductive rights, so I would not be looking for people who wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade, but I thought those judges were good, smart judges. That is about the end of the agreement with Mr. Trump. He gets, a lot of people say he's deregulated, rolled back a lot of regulations. Yeah, that's true to a degree, but all the regulations that he's rolled back are in the area of clean air and clean water, and I have a lifelong record as an environmentalist and take climate change very seriously. And my sense of what's the essence of a democracy is that the individual shall never be thrust in a corner in a democracy. And too often the last 3 years, I think that the first reaction of the president when he sees something that he doesn't agree with or doesn't like, or someone challenges him, is, yes, the individual absolutely shall be thrust in a corner. The worst example, and I'll stop with this, was Mrs. Khan, whose son had been killed fighting for the United States in the Middle East, Muslim couple, and the president attacked her for not speaking when her husband spoke about their son, and said, I don't know what her problem is. She's a Muslim, you know, so maybe they muzzled her because of her religion. Well, that wasn't her problem. Her problem was that her son was dead, fighting for the United States, and the President of the United States was attacking her personally for her religion. It's just not how you act as President of the United States. And a lot of what's going on. There are various technical underpinnings of impeaching a president, high crimes and misdemeanors, treason, bribery, that sort of thing. But a lot of what you're going to hear in Washington as these hearings continue on impeachment is people are really going to make the point, this is just not how a president acts. This is not how a president can act. The president said when they began these hearings, well, I'm going to boycott them. You can't investigate me. Well, that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says there are 3 branches of government, and Congress has oversight and supervisory power over the president. And the president, so that's a classic grounds for impeachment. So, an officer who's interfering with the proper workings of the government. So it may sound technical, but you know, when people who are opposed to the president throw up their hands and say, we just can't have this in the Oval Office, it would bring everything to a grinding halt. That's not a criminal offense, it's not a crime, but it's exactly what the framers of the Constitution had in mind as an impeachable and removable offense. So it's important to keep in mind that we're not talking about a crime here. We're just talking about somebody interfering with the proper workings of our government.
Thank you.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is Catherine, and I am a junior. My question for you is, as of September, there's been 289 shootings in the U.S. this year. What are your opinions on gun control, and what will you do to prevent the loss of lives due to shootings in the U.S. if you're elected as president?
Thank you. As to mass shootings and all other deaths by guns, I think the most helpful thing we can do, and we obviously can't do nothing, is to enact what are called red flag laws. It's a new statute. It would give any co-worker or any family member familiar with a person who is a gun owner to petition a judge. You have to be a judge to maintain the due process rights of the other person, the respondent in the proceeding, and make a case that so-and-so gun owner had a history of violence or had expressed admiration for white supremacists and shootings or for violent Islamic jihad. One of the 2 Texas shooters over the weekend, the recent 2 shootings in Texas, had carried around a list for years with himself of people who he thought should be shot. That's a pretty bad flag. And I know from my 7 years as a prosecutor that the FBI keeps records, for example, of all serial killers, so they know what characteristics and what the flashpoints, what the red flags are that identify and suggest that someone is at risk of that type of crime. You could do the same thing for mass shootings. I know, for example, that every single mass shooting has been committed by someone who grew up in a house without a father, and that's just one thing. but the history of violence is another thing. Expression of approval of violence is another thing. Expression of hatred for religious or national groups is another thing. All those are indicators. And so the family member or the co-worker could make their case to a judge that this person has these characteristics and has 6 guns in his apartment, and we think he shouldn't have them because we think he's a danger to himself or to others. And most people don't know this, but 2/3 of all the gun deaths in the U.S. every year are suicides. So we could be talking about people who are a danger to themselves and not to others. But either way, the judge would hear this, and if there was someone who was so evil or unstable and violence-oriented that he did pose this risk, he or she, then the judge would order the guns surrendered. And that would be trying to get at the mass shooters before they were in a position to do anything. And of course, it could also help people who were just very depressed and thinking about suicide and had a lot of guns. So I think that's the most constructive thing we could do. I'm not in favor of the government licensing and registering everybody's guns. There are 300 million rifles out there in the U.S. in legal hands, lawfully purchased. I've been a hunter my whole life, but that's not the point. The point is that that's 300 million instances where there's no reason to think that the owner or the proprietor of the gun is likely to do anything wrong. So I want to get in there before it happens. You may say, that sounds like a long putt. Not so much, really. There have been several of these mass shooters where co-workers have complained about violent resentment and recrimination, where we really have to do something about income inequality. One of the first things I did when I was governor in Massachusetts was to sharply increase the earned income tax credit, which is for working families, but at the lower end of the economic scale. It's almost like a negative income tax. And I worried constantly about the fact that, and this is an amazing statistic, 18% of the people in the United States live under the federal poverty rate, which at that time was about $32,000 a year for a family of 4. So I always kept in mind that I didn't want the pathway to the middle class, the door to the middle class, to be slammed shut in the face of the working poor. So I thought a lot about them. And that was one step in that direction. The other thing, I think things have gotten to the point, and I said I would have supported the tax bill that went through at the beginning of the president's term, but it really put much too much money way up at the top, and a lot of the very rich in this country are richer than they have any need to be. And so I would consider something, and don't hold me to the figures, but across the board relief for the bottom 20% of taxpayers, maybe give them a 15% cut in their taxes, or a 20% cut for the bottom 15%. I haven't run all the figures yet, but that amount of redistribution in the face of the extraordinary wealth that's been piled up at the top seems to me now justified as a prudential matter. By prudential, I mean to guard against social unrest. And I say that particularly because I do think the president, Mr. Trump, has succeeded in sowing a lot of social unrest and division in this country. Every time I hear the Pledge of Allegiance, I think to myself, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. We're all supposed to be indivisible. We're supposed to be united, the United States of America. And Mr. Trump has taken us in the opposite direction, and I think that's one of the biggest assignments of error against him.
Thank you.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is Camille, and I'm a sophomore here at Central. My question for you is, on the news every day, we see reports of conflict in the Middle East and rising tensions around the globe with North Korea, China, and Russia. What would you do to strengthen the American military, and what measures would you go to make sure we would not have to use it?
The question is, what would I do to strengthen the military and make sure we would not have to use it? I think my approach to international affairs would be almost the opposite of Mr. Trump's. Mr. Trump tends to insult our allies, such as NATO, and he seems not to understand that allies are force multipliers for us. And one of the purposes of having a military, in addition, of course, to a strong defense defending our country, is to keep the air lanes and the sea lanes around the world open for free trade. Now, Mr. Trump doesn't believe in free trade either, so maybe he doesn't think about the advantages of having allies in far-flung places like Asia, where if you want to keep the sea lanes open, if you have allies right there, that's a lot easier than having to send the 7th Fleet all the way around the world. More broadly, and I think the President, most people would agree that he's established a pattern of insulting our allies and our friends and cozying up to dictators like Vladimir Putin and Mr. Kim in Korea and Duterte in the Philippines, who kills people personally, Viktor Orban in Hungary, the alt-right, Erdogan in Turkey. He loves the strong man. And those are the autocrats, the people who are going against democratic principles. And when I hear someone say something like, as the president has, a free press is the enemy of the people, that's straight out of Mussolini and Hitler, straight out of the autocrats' playbook. But on the international side, I think we've got to spend more time engaging in traditional diplomacy and using soft power as well as military hard power, keep everybody engaged, keep everybody talking. And the president doesn't seem to believe in diplomacy. He believes in one-shot summit meetings where he and another person get together and decide everything. And the problem is, those issues involving trade and relations with countries, they're kind of complex. That's why we have a State Department, a Defense Department, a Homeland Security Department, and a lot of experts in the government. And the president has made no secret of the fact that he won't listen to anyone because he thinks he knows better, even though he has no preparation whatsoever for the job of being President of the United States. He ran a brilliant, intuitive campaign and got elected. You can't take that away from him. But he's been a New York, Palm Beach socialite his entire life with no background in government or serious work. So, you know, we should have a lot of conferences and indeed summit conferences with other countries, but that requires serious preparation and serious work. And the president not only doesn't like to listen to anyone, he also doesn't like to read. He's not a reader. So I don't know where he would get the information to be able to conduct a successful foreign policy.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is Julia Kim, and I'm a senior here at Central. And my question for you is, over the past 3 years, the Trump administration has done little in regard to protecting our planet. How do you plan on prioritizing this important cause apart from what is already in place? Like climate change.
Climate change would be about my #1 issue, and indeed the president has declared that he has a one-word platform for climate change, which is hoax. It's not a hoax. 2,000 scientists agree that global warming caused by humans is real, and they also agree that if we don't prevent the Earth's atmosphere, the temperature of the atmosphere from increasing by 1.5 degrees centigrade by the middle of this century, the polar ice cap will melt. And if the polar ice cap by the North Pole melts, all hell is going to break loose. The oceans are going to surge, all the seacoasts of every country in the world are going to be rearranged, many countries are going to be obliterated by severe flooding, we're going to have catastrophic weather, and the way you avoid that is by reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, and you can do that by a market mechanism by assigning a cost of so many dollars per ton to those polluters, emitters, who put carbon into the atmosphere. that would be coal companies, oil companies, mining companies, and you just let that price flow till it gets to a level that's so painful that the polluters don't want to pollute anymore. And then that will take care of the problem of the atmospheric temperature rising. Many of the proposals that have been made for, so that's my proposal, many of the other proposals that have been made on the Democratic side of the ledger consist only of dollar signs. Senator Sanders has said, I'm going to spend $16.3 trillion combating climate change. Well, that's nice. How are you going to spend that? How exactly is that going to work? Whereas if you put a price on carbon, then you know that the market will respond to the pricing signal and that carbon will be withdrawn from the atmosphere. So that's the approach. Deadly serious. I know 2050 seems like a long way away, but it's a planetary emergency, so we got to start immediately.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is Mirza Kushitsa. I'm a freshman here at Central, and my question for you is, what differentiates you from the Republican candidate, and why do you feel the need to run against him?
So almost everything differentiates me from Donald Trump. I suppose you could say we're both two large, orange-headed men, but that's about it. He has no background in government. I had 7 years in the Justice Department, head of the criminal division of the Justice Department, which means all criminal cases worldwide. I've traveled widely on business and legal matters for 15, 20 years. Led 16 trade missions around the world when I was governor. And I have a demonstrated record of cutting taxes while balancing the budget. We never ran a deficit in Massachusetts. I was confronted with one when I came in, and I closed it in 1 month. So that's what I mean when I say I'm a fiscal conservative. And indeed, the Wall Street Journal and the Cato Institute were two conservative-leaning organizations, ranked me the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States when I was in office. So I would immediately stop these trillion-dollar deficits. Speaking of which, I think this election involves kind of a generational shift. Millennials and Gen Xers are now going to be the wave of the future. Millennials are already the largest voting bloc. And there are two issues that fall squarely on younger voters, and that will be you all soon enough. One of them is these deficits. If they keep running up trillion-dollar deficits, you can forget about collecting Social Security. It's just not going to be there. It's also a national security issue because beyond a certain point, we can't rely on the Chinese and other countries to keep buying our treasury bills to make up for our deficit. So that's placing ourselves in the hands of other countries. And your generation should be worried about that. The other one is climate change, of course, because my generation won't be around to see all the mountain glaciers melt. No more snow on the White Mountains. Bad enough we lost the old man in the mountain. No more white in the White Mountains, very bad thing. So particularly if you like skiing. So again, I think that your generation is the one that's going to reap the whirlwind from inattention to climate change, and you should be troubled by the statement of the President of the United States that it's all a big hoax. Not going to fall on him either.
Good morning, Dr. Weld. My name is Tyler Cullen, and I'm a freshman here at Central. My question for you is, what can you do for the younger generation?
Well, as I was just saying, I'm orienting my whole campaign to try to fix the biggest problems facing the younger generation, which is an irresponsible government in Washington spending too much of your money and ignoring threats to you, such as environmental and climate threats. Just for what it's worth, my strategy politically in the primaries against Mr. Trump is to enlarge the electorate that's going to vote in those primaries. And I'm appealing particularly to younger voters and to women. And I think all women, not just suburban moderate women, but all women should be outraged by the recent statutes that have been passed in a couple of southern states and a couple of Midwestern states, which essentially give rapists more rights than women. It's right back to the Stone Age, practically, in terms of the chattel theory of women. And women, and this is with the full support of the Trump administration, and I just think women should not put up with that. I don't understand why these, congressmen who live 1,500 miles away think they should be making reproductive decisions. The most important decision a woman's ever going to make about her own body for a woman who they've never heard of and will never meet in their lives. It's about power, even more than ideology, and I think the power should rest with the individual. Some of you may know I actually ran on the Libertarian ticket in the last cycle. I'm on the Libertarian side of the Republican Party, which means that I think individual liberties and rights should always predominate over any assertion of government power. So that makes me a distinct liberal on so-called social issues, and I hope as you grow older, and even the age you are now, you'll be able to associate with the idea of individual liberties predominating. Thank you.
of not only Republicans, but also Democrats and independents, because I think it's important to unite across the party lines again.
Well, boy, is it ever important to unite across party lines. And just one data point, I was famous as governor of Massachusetts for reaching across the aisle to the Democrats who controlled the legislature. In my first weeks there, I said, why don't we, the Senate President, Speaker, and myself, have coffee and crackers every Monday afternoon, just social, get together. Mr. Speaker will be in your office the first time, and Mr. President, your office the next time, then we can rotate. And I said it that way because legislators hate being summoned to a governor's office. So I've made this submissive gesture, and that experiment was so successful that every governor since then, and there were 4 Republican governors in a row starting with me and then back to Democrat, but they still have that Monday afternoon meeting every day. And the spirit of bipartisanship is alive and well. It's kind of been a golden age in Massachusetts. And I like to think that if I did get to Washington, the atmosphere there would change in one day. Because the atmosphere now is so poisonous. Because these people, the 2 parties down there are locked in a death spiral embrace. I call it embrace because they need each other to demonize the other party and raise a lot of money so they can get reelected. And then they get together and raise the budget by 20%, all of which is bad. I do think that the obsession with getting reelected down there promotes this division and the lack of unity. And it's an obsession that I don't understand. One of the national offices I held when I was governor was chairman of the term limits organization, the United States term limits. And I think people should get to Washington, serve a couple of terms, and then get back to where they came from. And the problem is so many of these people didn't amass any skill sets before they got to Washington, so they're panicked at having to rejoin the dreaded private sector. But my whole career has been trying to unleash everybody's energies. I appointed an African American commission, a Caribbean American commission, Hispanic, Muslim, East Asian, South Asian, and I met with them all every month and said, tell me candidates from within your group who would make good judges. Tell me people who would be good cabinet members or boards and commissions in Massachusetts. So everyone had a seat at the table, and everyone felt included. And I think things like that are the reason why I got elected the first time with only 50.1% of the vote. But when I came up for re-election, it was 71% of the vote, because everybody was happy. And I think it's the job of a president of the United States, frankly, to care for everybody, to make everybody feel good about being an American, not to make everybody feel hostile towards individual groups and religions and ethnicities in the United States. not only not the job of the President of the United States, it's a betrayal of his oath.
Good morning, Governor Weld. My name is Olivia, and I am a junior. My question for you is, considering the controversy surrounding the organization Planned Parenthood, what is your view on Planned Parenthood? What is your view on the organization itself and the rights for women to make their own reproductive decisions? And what action will you take if elected?
Well, I've always been a strong supporter of Planned Parenthood, both in funding and government protections. And I would, reverse all the efforts that have been made in Congress to delimit Planned Parenthood and just put restrictions on what it can do, and anyone who performs an abortion has to have admitting privileges at the hospital. They've got it now. Some of the state, I think it's Missouri, there's only one place where a woman can seek to terminate a pregnancy. So I'm just way on the other side of that issue from the National Republican Party, and everybody knows it. But I'm happy to say that the New Hampshire Republican Party is 65% pro-choice on that same set of issues. So New England is a good place for me to spend as much time as I'm spending. But Planned Parenthood would be restored to a position of primacy if I'm President of the United States.
Thank you, Governor Weld, and thank you to all the students who asked questions today. We had a great discussion. On behalf of all of us here at Central High School, we have a few small tokens of appreciation. I would ask the sophomore class officers and Ms. Jones to stay for a few minutes following assembly. Students, you can now be dismissed to my seat.